You should not have the arrival syndrome, and always put yourself in somebody else's shoes to try to figure out why are they answering something or commenting on something the way that they are. Can we just take it down a notch and chill to try to understand before we just start word vomiting on people and it's something that doesn't even make sense? Hello, 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 and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you very much for being here. All right, let's talk about understanding one another. It is pretty crazy. I just saw something on a egg-related Facebook page, and everybody's in there screaming and yelling about everything. And they are farmers, ranchers, the like, screaming and yelling about how people do not understand their way of life. And it's always amazing to me how and why we do this in really any aspect of life. And I am not perfect. I am preaching to the choir here. But it is very easy for someone in the farm community to say, well, if people just came out to the farm and they just understood how their food was grown, or they just understood the amount of work that went into their food. And as I don't disagree with that, we also have to look at multiple sides of that. If we do not want them out on the farm, because there's a lot of farmers that I talk to that do not want anything to do with egg tourism. They don't want people on their operation. They don't want to take the time to explain because we have a chip on our shoulder about something that somebody said or some misconception. And so there's very few people in the agriculture community that want to teach. Most of those people just want to scream and yell about why people don't understand us. And it happens even within agriculture. When you have, and I have clients on both sides of this. I have clients that are traditional farmers, and I have clients that are regenerative, and I have clients that are organic, and I have the whole spectrum, right? I have hobby farmers. I have backyard gardeners that call themselves farmers. I don't care what you call yourself. It frankly does not matter to me what that looks like for you. At the end of the day, call yourself whatever. If you qualify as a Schedule F on your taxes for farming, then you can, I don't care. I am not here to judge. But the problem is we become the judgy Judies, and then we start yelling and screaming. There are people on the regenerative side of things that will yell and scream and belittle a traditional type farmer, somebody that's using fertilizer, chemical, all the things, and then they wonder why they don't listen to one another. You guys, early on, I was not nice about 401ks and IRAs, and I would belittle the broker, right? They're still not my favorite people. But I can understand from a viewpoint of both sides. Very early on, I thought the banker was the enemy. Now I can see the viewpoint from both sides. I can understand that we have some people that do not manage money, and yet they're calling the banker the bad guy. Is the banker really the bad guy? Or is it you because you're not managing your finances and you just want the bank to keep lending money? And so it's very easy to sit here and be that person. And so are we making friends and influencing people when we on the agricultural side of things are screaming and yelling that people don't know where their food is grown? If you took me, small town, right? I mean, where I live, there's 100,000 people. So it's not exactly small town to some, but it's small town to others. If you took me and you dropped me off in New York City, if you dropped me off in Phoenix, Arizona, if you dropped me off in Austin, Texas, it wouldn't go well. I'd be like, what do you mean I have to go on this bus? How do you navigate that? Would I find it out? Yes. Would I probably have to ask somebody for some help? Yes. And what would they say to me? Go back where you came from, you country hick. What are you doing here? They would probably have some sort of a reaction of how does she not know how to do that? Or I go to New York City and I'm dressed like I live in New York and they're like, where did she get dropped off from? Right? I'm dressed like I am for North Dakota, not New York. Sorry. Forgot where I lived. But there's going to be differences on both sides. We need to understand if we're going to be dropped off in a big city, we need to understand how that way of life is, right? We need to understand that there are ethnicities there that do not speak English and that is normal. For some people, if they come from an environment where there is not a lot of ethnic diversity, all of a sudden you're in a place in the United States where you feel like you don't even live in this country. And so understanding that does not just mean understanding where your food came from. It means that we have to have a legitimate conversation. Years ago, I was on a trip with the life insurance company, and there was somebody's wife was on this trip with him. And we sat beside her for dinner. A lovely lady. Oh, I got to know her kind of through the trip. Just a lovely lady. We had a great time. We ended up having dinner at the same table to where I find out she is vegan. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. Not normal for somebody in North Dakota to run into a vegan. And so I just asked why. And she was at the time, I don't know if she is now, I haven't talked to her in years, but she was at the time a big PETA individual. And so it was all about mistreatment of animals. And you can't assume that when somebody is a vegan, that they are doing that for that reason. A lot of times people are not eating meat because they believe it provides too much acid for your system. It's a cancer causer versus alkalinizing your system. And so we got to talking just about the whole piece of the animal and what does that animal provide. And we had just, as a gift, gotten leather flip-flops from the insurance company. And I said, oh, are you going to wear those shoes? And she said, yes, I am. And I said, you realize the leather for those shoes has come from the same animal or could be the same animal we are eating. And so there are so many byproducts of an animal that is outside of just the meat on the plate. And I said, do you understand that ranchers take very good care of those animals? If they're sick, they make sure that those animals live. If that animal dies, they just lost a whole lot of money. Did you know that a lot of us, those animals are pets for us, that we name them? When we have bottle calves, and I explained what a bottle calf was, when we have bottle calves, they will follow you around the yard like a dog. Like ranchers love those animals. We don't take it lightly if something is not taken care of. What you see on social media, what you're seeing on TV is really an abnormality of what is happening in that industry. And her and I had a very nice conversation about that. She had no idea because she was never exposed to it. Does not matter where she was from. She was never exposed to it. Just as if you would have put me in her environment, I would have been in shock to learn how people live in that environment. I've been to Toronto. It's mind-boggling to me. You're going to spend how many dollars on this apartment that you buy, and it's in a skyscraper, and you don't have a lawn. Like, you're like 30 floors off the ground, and you call that awesome? Like, what? If you put me in that environment, I would look like a complete idiot, right? And what I'm seeing online is the same thing. It's just a bunch of people repeating some noise about how people don't understand. And yet, are we trying to understand where they're coming from? Are we trying to have a conversation with them? Are we trying to educate them? Are we trying to educate ourselves about how they live? No, we're just screaming from the rooftop that everybody that doesn't know anything about rural America are idiots. Yet we're the ones standing back here looking like the idiots. And so we need to make sure in this industry, there's a lady that a little bit fancy, a little bit ranchy, I think is her handle. I forget her first name. She is always on social media talking about how we in this community of people are so judgy based on why are you wearing a cowboy hat or why are you wearing a belt buckle if you don't own any cows? And there's a whole saying, right? Lot of hat, no cattle. And it just, does it matter? We think it matters because we put value on that, on clothing. But does it matter at the end of the day? Can we just not have a conversation about it? Because what if somebody ranching has dreadlocks? Can you go into the big city and then they're like, what do you have dreadlocks for? You don't live in town, you live in the country. So why should you have dreadlocks? Are only certain people allowed tattoos over somebody else? Like only bikers can have tattoos? And nobody else is allowed to, if you don't own a motorcycle, you can't have a tattoo. Is that a thing? Right? And it's just, we have to look at the big perspective of those things because what is happening is we're fighting with one another on all aspects. We're fighting within agriculture. We're fighting outside of agriculture. Instead of putting that energy into something that actually helps and something that educates people. Nope. Instead, we're just out here screaming about how amazing we are because we're feeding the world and we're kind of irritating people. And they're saying, well, I don't really care if you feed the world because you're arrogant and you don't want to teach me. So reverse that and stay open-minded about it. Nelson talks about that. You don't want to have the arrival syndrome. And believe me, if I had the arrival syndrome, there's a lot of things I would not understand about agriculture, about business, about money. I would have not opened my horizons to understand not all financial advisors are bad people. They only know what they know. Not all life insurance agents are bad people. They only know what they've been taught. Not all bankers are bad people. They're only doing what they need to do for collateral of the bank. Is there bad in everything? Absolutely. Can they give people opportunity? Yes. Have they maybe given some people too much opportunity? Yes. There's a whole nother side to every single story, and we need to be open-minded about those things so that we can understand and then we can make a judgment. Doesn't mean that we can't make a decision, doesn't mean that we can't have a thought or a feeling or a judgment about it. It just means that why are you not looking at the full spectrum of things? And sometimes, just sometimes, it's maybe because we haven't got off the farm and we need to actually leave the farm and maybe leave our county and go see what people are doing around the world. Because what I find is that farmers and ranchers that travel a lot, it's insane how different they run their operations than people that never leave the county and just go to the county extension service and go to whatever speaker they have brought in. And that's great that those guys are bringing speakers in. But as somebody in your community, are you going out and finding people that have a bigger horizon, bigger dreams than you, different ways of doing things that you could implement? Think about the people that are doing that. They're changing things, they're adding things, they're subtracting things. They're estate planning differently. There's so many changes, and they're almost always a change for the better because we're not always going to do what grandpa did, right? Because maybe what grandpa did and what dad did weren't the best options. And so a lot of agriculture community also doesn't like social media because all these young people are getting crazy ideas. Oh, crazy idea. Maybe we should transition the farm differently. Maybe we should actually talk about our finances with our kids. Crazy, right? Because why? We don't even have the experience to see if it was good or bad. We're just saying, hey, this was bad. Was it bad because of the delivery? Why did something not work? Did that person even know what they were doing? So there's just, I just always have so many questions because I want to dig into that. But anywho, 15 minutes of me just trying to get you to understand you should not have the arrival syndrome, and always put yourself in somebody else's shoes to try to figure out why are they answering something or commenting on something the way that they are. Can we just take it down a notch and chill to try to understand before we just start word vomiting on people and it's something that doesn't even make sense? All right. Let me know if you need me for anything. Mary Jo at withoutthebank.com, and then go to farmingwithoutthebank.com to buy your book. All right, you guys, have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Farming Without the Bank podcast. We hope today's episode has inspired you to take control of your finances in new ways. Don't forget to check out our website, farmingwithoutthebank.com, and engage with us on our Facebook page, Farming Without the Bank. Join us next week as we smash more financial myths and empower you to accomplish your financial goals.